Welcome you all to CHD 210, Educating Exceptional Children. If you will look over on the bookshelf on your screen, you will see a picture of our textbook here, as well as a picture of the Special Education in Alabama, a right, not a favor. And if you click on this link right here, you can also get to online version of that text of just the Special Education in Alabama, a right, not a favor, not the textbook. But this just shows you what the two texts look like. So this week we're going to be talking about Chapter 4, Arranging the Physical Environment to Support the Inclusion of Children with Special Needs. Children with special needs need to feel physically and emotionally safe. This requires creating environments that are easily accessible and free of hazards, particularly for children who are visually impaired or who have significant motor disabilities. Daily schedules and environments should be predictable and allow as much independence as possible. So spending time thoughtfully arranging your classroom environment will definitely determine how behavior within that environment is managed. It can also prevent time loss and stress later on in managing negative behaviors if you make sure that your physical environment is set up so that it is a proactive environment. So let's get started. So when we're setting up a safe environment, we usually think pretty much, a lot of times we only think about physical safety, but there's also psychological safety. So these are the two considerations that we should take into account when we're setting it up. Experienced educators observe that children who do not feel safe will test limits until they understand the organization and limits of their environment. Therefore, your arrangement of space and materials must have order and stability. These elements contribute to the predictability children need to feel safe. When you're talking about that's about their psychological safety. So when you're talking about physical safety, especially children with specific needs or special needs may have some recommendations. If they're unstable or they fall easily, they may need to rely on sturdy or stable furniture. So therefore you might want to make sure that your shelves and your cabinets are secured. Sharp corners can be adapted with like rubber or foam edges so that they don't bump into those sharp corners. Maybe need some kind of rubber matting or soft surface outside. Handrails may need to be installed so that with children who have unsteady gaits can hold on to that. You will really need to take a look at your physical environment as far as obstacles that may be in the main traffic flow in your classroom. Like, do you need to, you actually probably need to start at your door and walk to various areas and then start at another area in the classroom and try to get yourself around in the classroom to see if there are any obstacles that might prevent a child who had who was non-ambulatory or unsteady, if it would actually keep them from being able to move about in the classroom. What about cords and wires and plugs, those kinds of things? Like, all of those things have to be taken into consideration. So when you're talking about your floor plan and setting it up, we may need to think about needs for a quiet area. Many children with special needs, especially children with autism, have low thresholds of tolerance for noisy and or crowded, busy environments. Providing a quiet area where children can be somewhat isolated and the noise is dampened can offer kind of a brief away, just give them an ability to get away from that loud noise. Avoidance of large open areas. Some children with special needs may be overwhelmed by environments that seem disorganized or confusing. Divide your large room into specific areas for activities and clearly mark the boundaries of those areas with dividers, shelves, other furniture, and equipment. Some children prefer a more enclosed small space in which to play. So sometimes it's helpful to arrange at least one area that's closed in on all three sides. And like you could use a bookshelf to close in all three sides. Acoustic adaptations, what we're talking about, that is the way the noise is in the classroom. Noisy environments may create significant stress for many children with special needs and sometimes for adults as well. This can interfere with children's ability to pay attention, can increase irritability, behavior challenges, aggressiveness. Sound can be dampened in your classroom by using a rug, tiles, any kind of materials hanging from the ceiling, fabrics, even artwork on the wall, anything that kind of absorbs sound. And then let's talk about the last one, visually simple presentation of materials to reduce clutter. In many cases, if there is a lot of clutter, it prevents children from being able to make choices, like they have too many choices because they can't focus on one thing because there's so many things around them. So children who appear to be unable to choose activities or seem to be at loose ends may be reacting to the fact that there's just too much clutter. I am so sorry. Or disorganized presentation of the materials or the toys or the activities that you want them to be able to do. So one way to kind of overcome that is to store items in a consistent place, group like things together, allow some empty space between items. Use pictures to clearly label items or containers, like showing what kind of manipulative is actually in each one of those containers. And that really may help children, especially who have some fine motor, with their fine motor control, is actually being able to look at those and seeing what's in the bins. All right, so let's think about planning activity areas for children with special needs. First of all, we need to make sure that when we're talking about an activity area, it's a space within the room designed to facilitate different types of activities ranging from small group to more robust activities like block building or dramatic play. Your design will encourage children to learn that different behaviors are expected in different areas of your classroom. Too much open space invites running and wandering around. And then, like we said earlier, too much clutter is difficult for children who have trouble focusing. Well-defined activity areas have visible boundaries, surfaces to accommodate the activity that's going to go on there, and adequate space for display of materials and storage. One goal in your activity area should be to achieve an appropriate balance of activity areas suited to the developmental needs, levels, and interests of the children. So one thing to think about are a few things that we have on the board, but let's think about, if you look on page 63 of your textbook, you'll see the different activity areas and suggestions there, but make sure that you focus on what the technology center. One thing I want to bring to your attention is that we are seeing computers, you know, they're increasing in preschool classrooms. So NAUIC made a position statement about the use of technology in a preschool classroom and with young children. And what the authors of that statement said is that preschooler screen time should be less than 30 minutes if they're in a half-day program and less than 1 hour if they're in a full-day program. So make sure that if you are in a program or if you are going to, when you eventually get your own classroom, that the use of technology and media does not replace the other essential activities such as creative play, exploration, physical activity, conversation among children, outdoor experiences, any of those other typical preschool experiences. But most of all, involvement with technology and media should not become an isolated activity. It shouldn't be something that they just go over and do independently, okay? Because we want them to be able to have that interaction. So when you are arranging your materials within your activity area, you want to make sure that they're very, very well organized and that you're taking into account the things that you see on the screen. Clearly labeled shelves and containers using photos or words contribute to effective cleanup and encourage both matching and like object to the photo, and also emerging literacy, defining letters and words, okay? So having those things labeled is not just for cleanup, it goes well beyond that and works on not only on cleanup, but also on that emergent literacy. One thing to think about with that is that sometimes items should be visible but difficult to access for children. And you may be thinking, why in the world? Why would you want the child to be able to see it but not be able to be able to access it? Well, here's the reason. A lot of times, for instance, items of interest can be placed on a teacher shelf, like above the classroom bookcase, and this will provide important motivation and even an opportunity for children with language delays to use their communication skills to request those items. So they actually have to verbalize what it is that they want, okay? So lots of benefit to having things clearly organized, but sometimes out of the reach of children, so they have to communicate their needs. One thing to think about too is when you're thinking about your traffic management is that you need to make sure that you can ensure that a child with a wheelchair can navigate both in and out of that activity area. With lighting, which sometimes we don't even think about that. Like, why in the world are we thinking about lighting? Well, fluorescent lighting, which is like these large bulbs that are in the ceiling, can sometimes really be, because it's so much bright white light that it's stressful to children. So you want to have as much like natural light in your classroom, windows, lamps maybe that might be secure to the table so that they can't be knocked over, skylights. So those are the things we want to take into consideration, not necessarily fluorescent lighting. And if we can keep fluorescent lighting to a minimum, that seems to work out better sometimes for children. One thing I do want you to think about in designing your specific activity areas in your small manipulative activity area is that the use of manipulatives can create special challenges for children with special needs. They may choke on them if they're smaller pieces, so you got to be able to keep a really good watch on that. One thing, they may not be able to grip them as easily. So one thing that your book suggests, which I think is a grand idea, is to take a shelf liner, like that rubber grippy kind of thing that you might put in your kitchen cabinets or your shelves, and actually put that on the tabletop surface so that it keeps the items from sliding around on the table, which I thought that was a great idea. When you're thinking about your outdoor play area, we realize that outdoor play is essential for children with special needs, just like it is for, you know, regularly developing children. Outdoor activities offer unique opportunities that may not be easily replicated indoors. It is important to maximize these opportunities through careful planning and use of your outside area. We also know that children who have symptoms of attention deficit disorder or ADD, when they go outside, those symptoms are significantly reduced just by playing outside in green or natural outdoor settings instead of just being inside. One thing to think about, and a lot of our schools have this now, is a gardening area. And we think, oh, well, that's fine. That's just teaching them about plants. But there's so much more. It can also teach about diversity. Involving parents and grandparents will bring about discussions about the different types of food that are eaten or grown over time. It brings a wonderful way for your families to become involved in maybe planting an ethnic garden representing the different types of cultures in their classroom. So there's lots of benefit to that outdoor play area. So Thanks for joining me for Chapter 4. If you watch this, then you should be pretty good on your Chapter 4 quiz because we covered all of the items that you will see in that quiz. See you next week.